And we're back with episode 7 overview for Queendom 2. This episode was extremely short and pretty much just covered the dance units for the remainder of part 1 of round 3. Now after last week's 130-minute episode, it felt very abrupt to watch the show just kind of like end after 90 minutes, but I guess it works out for me since I can just make a shorter video here, but they also left a huge info gap which makes it kind of hard to speculate about the next show. Also, there was so much recap and montage filler for such a short episode, it really kind of felt cheap there. Now, before the competition resumes, we get some recaps of last week's episode, some previews of this very episode we're watching, and then as well as kind of round 3's part 2 fantastic section, including the return of Cosmic Girls' Bona. Chat was going wild. It came in so early that I wasn't even settled in to properly notice everything, and I almost confused her for Nseo before I realized who it was. All of the fantastic stages look more focused and flashy than previous ones. I think the competition is really heating up now. After some quick evil editing by Mnet about Hyolyn storming out at the end of the day and Brave Girls maybe getting last place again, or not, after the end of round 3, we get right into the vocal unit rankings. For the vocalist rankings, Universe in Unha won first place, and the chat was about 60% shocked. Some people saying it was rigged, unfair, robbed, etc. And I mean, I personally don't get how they won, but like the rest of the chat, I can only judge the performances by what is shown to us on screen on the actual edited show and the live streams. And, I've already stated my criticisms for the vocals last week, so I won't comment any further on it, but Team 33 with Hyolyn and Minyoung, they won second place, and that made Hyolyn feel competitive, while Minyoung felt like maybe she wanted to win, but she was also happy not to be last. Sun and Moon with Luna and Kepler got last place, and Luna was angry and felt like they really wanted to kill the dance unit number to make up for it. Now when you get to the dancer unit battles, we start off with the first group, KEVIZ, and that consists of Kepler and 2/3 of VVZ. Kepler really wanted to do well since Kepler came in last on the vocal, and they've been ranking rather poorly throughout the whole show, to be honest. Now in preps, Kepler visited VVZ's studio at Big Planet Made wearing purple tracksuits as some kind of callback to Honey J and the Holy Bang Girls. They choreographed the whole dance piece. When Honey J actually showed up, she watched their performance and was mostly pleased. But she did point out their sync problems. Now struggled the most, and at this point I was wondering why she was even kind of sent in, considering the skill gap between even her and just Sin B. Now chat was crying about evil editing on here, but I think it was actually fair. She admitted it took her longer to learn choreo, and actually Hikaru of Kepler basically had to help her with it. Now at that point I wondered, but why was Sin B leaving hanging? Like maybe Hikaru was unofficial dance lead at that point because she kept killing it, but it was just kind of odd that for a competition, and even just for just being girls in a group, Sin B wasn't aware of her own teammates' struggles and helping her through it. That kind of felt kind of strange and hands-off, Now for the actual performance, actually did well. She worked out the issues. Actually, if you follow my coverage of this show since the beginning, you will know two things. The first is that I've always criticized Kepler for their precision and sync issues, and I've yet to be blown away by VVZ, and that's partly due to high expectations and their issues with expressiveness. But this performance was actually great. It had good sync, nobody was off or disjointed, and they actually felt like a solid team. Though the precision aspect was kind of cancelled by power, which is kind of expected for Kepler. Sin B was still lacking in the expression department. It's not like she can't do good expressions. She does them all the time. It's just during performance, for some reason, she kind of just always defaults to stoic. But Kepler was actually so good in covering up for this, like Daeon, Hikaru, Xiaoting, they were all doing really good expressions, and you really wouldn't just notice Sin B not filling in this gap unless you were looking for it. Now, I gave this performance a 9.3, which is really high, I think, and I thought it was a winning performance in the time that I was watching it, and they were the first to perform. I actually thought they would take it home after this, but, when it came to the next group was Exit with Hyolyn and Nseo and Yuram of the Cosmic Girls. In prep, there was some interesting talk about how Hyolyn was formerly part of Starship, like maybe as little as 5 years ago, and that's kind of where the X comes in from the name Exit. When coming up with the concept, Hyolyn suggested they become villains, as in thieves, and they should use dancers to fill the gaps. When the Chica showed up, they wanted more charisma out of Nseo and Yuram, which led to some funny moments with the Cosmic Girls trying to be cool, despite them normally being very girly and dreamy. I find it interesting how Nseo is actually really good at the serious face, but she's almost always over the top cheerful in person, and that kind of prevents her from being totally fierce, I think. Now, as a side note, there were actually so many people in the room during practice. I have no idea who all those people are, but they seem to be backup dancers and other like people just kind of like watching. Now, in the actual performance, I honestly felt like Nseo still looked cheerful a lot of the times, more than fierce. But then the overall was actually quite good. Now, I was blown away by the previous KEVIZ performance, but Exit was on par, if not better. I was actually thinking it was a tie because the smoke was kind of distracting in the tail end of the performance, but after the ending fairies with their serious faces, I felt like that kind of made up for it. And then I just gave the performance a 9.4 just to avoid a tie with KEVIZ. But then that 0.1 actually places them above them as well. I lean towards Exit having a point advantage because I don't really want to blame the performers for a distracting stage direction like the smoke machine, although I did kind of blame Universe in for their distracting stage performance for a vocal performance. And I just felt like maybe a lot of people were into that aspect of the performance more than the actual vocals. Now, for Queen is now they're the last group, and most people were rooting for them. Queen is now consists of Brave Girls Eunji and then 4 members of Luna. In prep, Luna's Olivia High was really nervous. She had been scolded hard in prior practice, and she was struggling with a new challenge. When Eunji showed up, she noticed Luna had like 12 small practice rooms for each individual member of Luna, and each one was decorated with like a different personality. They did eventually get around to practicing, and when Monica showed up again, she praised their improvement, but also pointed out that their expressions needed work. And also gave them guidance on like motivation and interpretation so they could better express some of the moves and know why they're doing it, and that really helped them a lot. She was very hands-on, even at the same day rehearsal, and I think it paid off. Monica was probably as much a part of the team as the actual dancers. For the actual performance, it was undeniably the winner. Olivia's start was captivating. Last week I praised her as the prettiest girl in Queendom 2, so it was kind of a treat to see her kick it off, to be honest. But the sync wasn't just clean, it actually felt like totally connected, like they were one organism despite not doing even the same moves. So, doing these successive waves, it just kind of like felt completely just joined together. And it's easy, to go strong or hard in a dance, but when you can control the flow as well as the timed gaps between moves, and people are watching you, you're in control. Eunji did a great job with expressions, and I'm pretty sure I got the shivers at one point. And Eves, she had this great solo as well. Actually, the performance actually felt short to me, and then as we watched on the show, people said that as well. It's like, whoa, it ended so abruptly, and I guess that's because everyone was so kind of moved along with it, and I could have watched it for much longer too. And in the end, I actually gave it a 9.7. It could have been better if they didn't go black and white at the beginning, but they should have instead gone high contrast and kept the full color. And I think that would have made it kind of darker and more creepy, but also more captivating as well. And I think that the, also a negative, even though a lot of people like this part, I think that the Infinite part where all their heads are coming out, it was kind of shaky to me. But, it was overall just a great performance. Now, in the end, the final rankings agreed with mine for the dancers. Queen Is Na got first, Exit got second, and KEVIZ got third. But by no means did anyone actually perform poorly. I would even say that Exit and KEVIZ are almost tied. That's how close it was. And it was very tight. And I think the ultimate difference wasn't even, not to discount the effort you put into pulling it off, but I think the ultimate difference was in the choreography. And if everyone just chose Tell Me Now, and then everyone had to pull it off, it would be who could pull it off the best. But Tell Me Now was definitely the hardest to pull off, so I guess they do deserve the win. But if you performed each one flawlessly, the choreography itself was the winning one. So praise here just goes to Monica, to be honest. This part of round 3 was basically redemption for the low-ranking Queendom competitors, except for maybe Kepler. But everyone did well during the dancer competition regardless of the rankings. Now Kepler was really sad, because they always worked hard, but they always placed poorly. And honestly, I think they need to work smarter, not harder. The sync and precision stuff is really no joke, and they need to figure it out. But they're also improving, but creatively they also need to think bigger and not be held back by, I don't know who's deciding their stages and their directions and their concepts. Hyolyn is basically evidence that being hands-on and having creative high standards in that approach gives you a better stage. And Monica even micromanaging Queen Is Na also proof that you kind of have to work out the kinks, and you have to have someone who knows what's going on and knows what needs to be done. So in the end, it's really just creative, and just it's a knowledge based thing, and then working out those kinks. So in closing, this was a really short episode. I have no idea what to expect for the fantastic part of round 3, but the previews look really nice. I hope Brave Girls don't rank last again, and they don't miss a chance to perform the new single. Honestly, I think it's a bad game mechanic to get kicked out of the show when you really only allow for majority-based rankings. Like, I mean, I think voters can only choose maybe 1 or 2 of the groups and then not decide the rankings of the lower groups. And I think that creates a greater gap between favorites and the remainders, and it just looks like Mnet is afraid of the anti-votes, I think something similar happened in Girls Planet, where they just wanted to appeal to the solo stands, like whoever, like just people's individual favorites, and like the most of those for each individual, rather than, and this is kind of like something you would do if you want sales, right? But if you want like overall group harmony and the balance of the group, and you should let everyone rank everyone, and then like whatever is the best overall would kind of like get you there. But I think that they were way more focused on the sale aspect of it. But I guess that's pretty much it. I look forward to seeing Bona rejoin Cosmic Girls. I want Kepler to redeem themselves and iron out those issues. And then Brave Girls, I definitely want them to survive. So hopefully nothing, it's just evil editing, hopefully. But anyways, like, share, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.